Okay, what if I told you that scientists actually tested energy healing on living cells in a laboratory? And I mean not on people, not on believers, not even on Reiki practitioners. We are talking about actual isolated living cells. In this explainer, we're diving into something completely fascinating, the cellular science of Reiki. You know, whenever energy healing gets brought up, someone eventually, and totally fairly, points out that it could literally just be the power of suggestion. But here's the thing, cells don't have beliefs. They don't expect anything. So what actually happens when researchers put this to the test in a strictly controlled laboratory setting? And why on earth are major hospitals studying this alongside recovery from major surgeries? Let's dive right in.
To really understand why this research is so groundbreaking, we have to tackle the skeptics' biggest objection head-on. And honestly, it's a completely fair one: the placebo effect. Critics almost always argue that Reiki works purely because it forces a person to just sit still and relax. And we know from basic biology that relaxation itself can drastically reduce stress, it can improve your mood, and it can even blunt pain perception. If you believe a therapy is going to help you, your brain can literally trick your body into feeling better. So researchers asked a pretty brilliant question. Actually, it's more like a puzzle. How can we test the biology of healing without any expectation whatsoever?
Well, the solution to that puzzle is beautifully simple. On one hand, you have a relaxed human patient. Humans have egos, right? We have hopes, and most importantly, we have a brain that is completely capable of triggering that placebo effect. But on the other hand, you have an isolated cell sitting in a clinical petri dish. If energy healing produces measurable effects in those isolated cells, then we are completely removing human psychology from the whole shebang. Think about it. A stressed cell in a lab has no ego, it has no beliefs, and it has absolutely no ability to convince itself to heal. We are looking at pure, unadulterated biology.
All right, section 1, the micro. Let's look at these cells in the lab.
Back in 2020, researchers at the University of Virginia designed this wild experiment on stressed mouse intervertebral disc cells. They wanted to see if Reiki could provoke active repair. They didn't just want to see if these stressed cells would just barely survive. They wanted to know if they would actively try to fix themselves under pressure. And guess what? After the treatment, the cells showed a significant increase in two very specific biological markers, collagen II and aggrecan. To put that into perspective, think of these markers like the fresh rebar and wet mortar that a construction crew uses to rebuild a damaged brick wall. It's the essential scaffolding the body uses to repair its own tissue structure. So the treated cells weren't just passively sitting there, they were actively ramping up the production of their own structural repair kits way more than the control group.
But wait, it gets crazier. The researchers then measured something even more unusual: biophotons. Now, biophotons are extremely weak light emissions that are naturally produced by living organisms. You definitely can't see them with the naked eye, but highly sensitive laboratory equipment can pick them up. Yes, living things actually glow in the dark. The absolutely crucial point here is that after the Reiki treatment, the researchers observed something incredible. The treated cells literally started glowing. They began emitting significantly more light photons than the cells in the control conditions.
This paints such a clear picture of cellular health. You can kind of think of this biophoton emission like a dimmer switch on a smart home lighting system. A stressed, damaged cell, that's like a flickering light bulb trapped in a low power mode. But when that cell is placed in an optimal healing environment, it actively turns up its dimmer switch. That surge in photon emissions isn't magic, folks. It's a literal biological sign of vitality and active communication within the cellular system. Now, let's be very clear. This doesn't mean science has definitively proven the exact mechanics of how Reiki works, but it for sure proves that researchers documented measurable, undeniable biological changes after the treatment.
Moving on to section 2, the macro. How this plays out in human hospital recovery.
So, what does this all mean when we scale it up to major human trauma? Let's step out of the sterile, egoless laboratory and walk right into the incredibly complex, high-stakes environment of a modern hospital. Because recovery after major surgery is, without a doubt, one of the most intensely demanding healing processes the human body can ever go through. Just look at what the body has to do all at once. It has to actively repair severed tissues, manage a massive influx of inflammation, regulate intense pain signals, and somehow try to calm down a nervous system that has just endured profound physical stress. Researchers wanted to know if that cellular vitality we just saw in the petri dish could actually support human patients fighting through this exact process, specifically focusing on women recovering from cesarean deliveries. So they ran a randomized, controlled clinical trial on C-section patients. They divided these women into 3 distinct groups. You had a standard control group, a sham Reiki group where, get this, untrained actors literally just mimic the hand placements, and finally, a real Reiki group. And the results?
the patients receiving the real Reiki experienced significantly lower pain and anxiety levels. Plus, they required drastically less pain medication than both the control and the sham groups. They even went much, much longer before needing another dose.
Now, it is absolutely crucial that we look at this neutrally and ground these findings. Energy healing is not a substitute for standard medical care. I mean, it is not going to perform a surgical operation, and it definitely won't set a broken bone. But what these hospital studies show is exactly why major medical institutions all around the world are now utilizing it. They aren't using it as an alternative to medicine. They use it as a powerful complementary tool. It's an additional layer of support that just helps optimize the body's natural recovery timeline right alongside traditional treatments.
Which brings us to Section 3, Optimizing Your Personal Recovery.
Let's bring the concepts from this explainer right into your living room to deal with everyday chronic stress and burnout. Because odds are you aren't watching this while recovering from a major surgical operation. So how do we actually apply the science of glowing cells and hospital pain management to our daily lives? Well, it all comes down to your autonomic nervous system. Your body literally cannot repair its cells efficiently if it is constantly stuck in a sympathetic state, which is your fight-or-flight survival mode. Think of a chronically stressed, burnout-prone nervous system as a car that is hopelessly stuck in high gear. The engine is just constantly redlining, burning through fuel just to survive the day. To achieve that deep cellular restoration we saw in the lab, you have to shift into a parasympathetic state, the rest and digest mode. When your nervous system finally feels completely safe, the body stops just surviving and starts redirecting its energy to actively repairing tissues and producing those structural markers like collagen we talked about earlier.
Okay, so how do we practically apply this right now? First, you just have to acknowledge when you're hitting burnout. Second, you have to actively and manually downshift your nervous system out of that high gear. Third, dedicate actual protected time to tech-free unwinding, deep relaxation, or, hey, even complementary therapies like Reiki, massage, or meditation. And finally, by doing all this, you're allowing your body the biological safety it desperately needs to redirect its energy toward natural cellular repair. You are, quite literally, reaching in and turning up your own cellular dimmer switch.
Sleeping better and feeling deeply, profoundly peaceful after a session.
And finally, section conclusion, rethinking energy healing.
We started this explainer by asking if energy healing was just a placebo effect, right? And we've journeyed from isolated cells in a laboratory to post-operative hospital wards, all the way to your own personal nervous system regulation. Let's just quickly recap the hard data. We've seen that when scientists tested Reiki, they documented increased cellular repair markers like collagen 2 and aggrecan in isolated cells. We saw literal surges in invisible biophoton light emissions. In clinical environments, we saw measurable drops in post-operative pain and a significantly reduced reliance on analgesic medications. Now, do these studies answer every single question we have about energy healing? No, of course not. Science is a continuous journey. But they do prove, for sure, that energy healing is producing measurable biological results that go way beyond the placebo effect. Which leaves us with a final, pretty massive question to consider. Based on all this data, does energy healing deserve more rigorous, well-funded scientific investigation? Because to me, it certainly seems like we are just scratching the surface of what the human body is actually capable of when given the perfect conditions to thrive.
And now, I really want to turn this over to you. Do you think therapies like Reiki and other biofield healing modalities deserve more scientific funding and research? I would absolutely love to hear your perspective on this, so please jump down and share your thoughts in the comments below. And hey, if you're passionate about efficient, focused learning and you want more deep dive explainers just like this one, make sure you're subscribed so you don't miss our next topic.
I want to leave you with this final, really profound thought to carry with you today. Healing isn't only about fixing what's broken. It's about creating the conditions in which the body can thrive. Whether that's in a petri dish, a hospital bed, or just in your own daily life, creating the environment for your biology to succeed is everything. Thank you so much for learning with me today. I'll see you in the next explainer.